Hi, my name is Eric. I'll be doing Digestion 1, Structures and Function of the Digestive System. I'll be specifically focused on the alimentary canal and accessory organs. My goal is to guide you through each structure and function, as well as the journey of food through the digestive tract. By the end, you should have a clear understanding of how our body breaks down food, absorbs nutrients, and eliminates waste. I'll also cover the key topic about the four layers of the digestive tract. So next up is slide 2, the alimentary canal versus the accessory organs. So the digestive system consists of these two things, the canal and the accessory organs. The alimentary canal is a continuous pathway that the food travels through. It's about 25 feet long while you're alive and about 35 feet long after you die, after the muscles relax, which is a pretty interesting fact. So it starts from the mouth and ends at the anus, and it includes the pharynx, esophagus, stomach, and both the small intestine and the large intestine, and the anus. And these organs work together to move food and absorb nutrients. So on the left, I have the visual, starts with the mouth, esophagus, stomach, and then travels from the intestines all the way down to the rectum. And then in contrast, I have the accessory organs on the right. This includes the liver, pancreas, gallbladder, and salivary glands, along with the tongue and the teeth. They support digestion by releasing enzymes and other substances that aid in the breaking down of the food. For example, the pancreas produces enzymes that help digest proteins and fats, while the liver produces bile for the digestion of fat. And they don't directly come in contact with the food like the alimentary canal does, but it's also an essential part of the process, and without it would be detrimental. Next up, we have the walls of the digestive tract. It's made up of four main layers, and they each contribute something different to the process of digestion and nutrient absorption. So I'm going to start with the innermost layer, the one at the very top. It's the mucosa, or otherwise called mucous membrane. This layer directly contacts the food in the lumen and is responsible for both absorbing nutrients and producing mucus, which helps protect the digestive lining from enzymes and acid. So it has three sublayers: the epithelium, which absorb nutrients, the lamina propria, which houses blood vessels and immune cells, and the muscularis mucosae. It's a thin layer that creates folds, increasing the surface area for absorption. So the next one down is the submucosa, a connective tissue layer. It's a thin connective tissue layer that supports the mucosa. It contains blood vessels and lymphatics. They carry the nutrients to the rest of the body. And the submucosa also has glands that secrete digestive fluids. Um, there's another thing called the submucosal plexus. It's a nerve network, and it helps regulate the secretions and blood flow. And it also adjusts digestion based on what's present in the tract. Then we have the muscularis externa. It's primarily responsible for moving the food along the digestive tract, along with it has two smooth muscle layers, the inner circular layer and the outer longitudinal layer. Both of these contribute to peristalsis, which is the involuntary movement of food down the tract, which means you don't control it. They're like wave-like contractions that push the food along. And in the stomach, there's a third muscle. It's called the oblique layer to help churn the food. And then lastly is the serosa. It's the outermost layer, and it's a protective membrane that covers the organs in the abdominal cavity. This layer is also known as the visceroperitoneum. It reduces friction as the digestive organs move. In areas outside the abdomen, like the esophagus, it's called the adventitia. It's a dense tissue that anchors organs to surrounding structures. So next up, I have the oral cavity and its role in digestion. So digestion actually begins with the oral cavity or the mouth. It's where both chemical and mechanical digestion begin. So when food enters the mouth, mechanical digestion begins because your teeth and tongue chew the food to break it down into smaller pieces, making it easier to swallow and letting the enzymes get better access to the food. Um, the tongue helps in this process by positioning the food between the teeth and mixing it with saliva, and it kind of forms like a cohesive like mass that's ready for you to swallow it. Next up is the salivary glands, and they play a very critical role in chemical digestion. So there's three um, main parts or main pairs of the salivary gland. It's the parotid, submandibular, and the sublingual glands. They release saliva, which contains like water and mucus and different enzymes. And one of these enzymes is called amylase, which starts breaking down the carbohydrates into simpler sugars inside the mouth, even before the food reaches the stomach. And additionally, saliva helps to make the food moist, making it easier to swallow and protecting the sensitive lining of the tract, the GI tract. It also consists in saliva also contains substances that help neutralize acids from the food, and it's kind of like a defense component. And the tongue then pushes the food mass down to the back of the mouth, directing it to the pharynx, and to continue down to the digestive tract. So the oral cavity is essentially the starting point of digestion, preparing the food both mechanically and chemically, and ensures it for the next process. So next time I'm going to go over what happens when the food goes into the pharynx and ends at the stomach. So after the food is formed into that mass in the oral cavity, it enters into the pharynx, which is a muscular passageway, and the pharynx helps guide the food from the mouth to the esophagus. So as you swallow, like a small flap called the epiglottis automatically closes over the trachea, which is also called the windpipe, to prevent the food from entering your airway. This prevents you from choking and ensure the food goes down the right direction. So once it's past the pharynx, the food, it enters the esophagus. It's a muscular tube. It's about 10 inches long, and it carries the food from the pharynx to the stomach. So in the esophagus, as I mentioned earlier, it uses a series of wave-like muscle contractions known as peristalsis, which is the involuntary muscle contractions, which help to propel the food downward and keep it moving along, even if you're lying down, moving, doesn't matter. And it's like a consistent flow through the digestive tract. And at the end of the esophagus, it reaches the stomach. And in the stomach, it's further broken down by the gastric juices. And it's broken down into like a semi-liquid. It's called chyme. And that's basically it. And when it gets to the stomach, it's effectively in the next stage of digestion. Okay, next I'm going to go over the structure and the function of the small intestine. So the small intestine is the longest section of the digestive tract, and it plays a big role in digestion and nutrient absorption. And it's divided into three main parts: the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. So the first part is the duodenum, as I've pointed to the arrow, as I pointed with the arrow. It's where the chyme from the stomach mixes with digestive secretions, and this is where the bile from the liver and gallbladder um, and pancreatic enzymes enter the small intestine to help break down the fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. The duodenum is basically the site of chemical digestion in the small intestine. And next we have the jejunum. It's the main site for the nutrient absorption. Its walls are lined with finger-like projection called villi and even smaller microvilli, and they greatly increase the surface area for absorbing nutrients like amino acids, fatty acids, sugars, and different vitamins. And the blood vessels within the villi transport um, absorb the nutrients for the rest of the body. Next up is the ileum. And the ileum is just the last part of the small intestine. And it absorbs any remaining nutrients that the jejunum didn't get. And it gets particularly the vitamins, and before passing the undigested material into the large intestine. The ileum also contains clusters of lymphoid tissue called Peyer's patches, and that helps protect the body by monitoring and defending against bacteria that make into the digestive system. So overall, the small intestine isn't just chemical digestion, but it's also important for nutrient absorption and making it a crucial part of your body and digestive system. So last but certainly not least, it's the large intestine. I'm just going to go over the structure and function like I did for the small intestine. And like I said, it's the final part of the digestive system. Its primary function is just absorbing water and electrolytes, um, and synthesizing certain vitamins and eliminating waste. And unlike the small intestine, it doesn't have any of those villi that I was talking about, those villi, but it does contain bacteria that plays a big role in breaking down any remaining material. So the large intestine begins with the cecum. It's a small pouch that's connected to the ileum by the ileocecal valve, and this controls entry of the undigested material from the small intestine. And the cecum is also attached to the appendix. It's a narrow tube that plays an immunological role by acting as a reservoir for bacteria, the good bacteria. So from the cecum, the food residue moves into the colon, which is divided into four regions: the ascending, transverse, descending, and sigmoid colon. As residue travels through the colon, water and electrolytes are absorbed, transforming it from a liquid to a solid form. Um, this is essential for maintaining hydration and electrolyte balance. So bacteria in the colon also synthesize vitamins, particularly vitamin K and B, which the body can then also absorb. After the colon, it reaches the rectum. It's about an 8 to 9 inch tube that stores waste until it's ready to be expelled. The rectum has special folds called rectal valves that allow gas to pass without releasing solid waste. Finally, the waste reaches the anal canal, which has two parts. The internal anal sphincter controls involuntarily, and the external anal sphincter, which we control voluntarily when we defecate. So overall, the large intestine is critical for reabsorbing water, forming solid waste, and preparing it for excretion from the body, while also producing essential vitamins with the help of good gut bacteria. So this slide is basically just the pathway that the food takes through the digestive system, which I've gone over most of it, but I'm just gonna break it down. And the photo is right here, so it's pretty easy to read and go along with. So, like I said, it starts with the oral cavity in the mouth. The food is broken down by mechanical and chemical digestion with the teeth and the tongue, and then by the salivary glands chemically. Um, the initial breakdown just prepares the food for the journey down the rest of the digestive tract. Then it moves into the pharynx, which guides it down to the esophagus, and through a series of muscle contractions, peristalsis, the esophagus pushes the food down into the stomach, and in the stomach, it's mixed with the gastric juices, and it's including the hydrochloric acid, and it further breaks down the food, and it turns into a semi-liquid called chyme. Next, it enters the small intestine, starting at the duodenum, where it mixes with the bile from the liver and enzymes from the pancreas to further digest. The jejunum and ileum of the sections of the small intestine then absorb the nutrients into the bloodstream through the villi and microvilli, which maximize the surface area for nutrient uptake. After the small intestine, it goes into the large intestine, beginning with the cecum and moving through to the colon, where the water and electrolytes are absorbed. And the remaining material is compacted into the solid waste. Bacteria in the colon also produce essential vitamins like K and B, which the body absorbs. Finally, the waste moves into the rectum until it's stored, or where it's stored until it's ready to be excreted through the anal canal. At this point, the digestive process is complete, with all the usable nutrients absorbed and waste ready to be eliminated. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And here are my references and sources. Thank you.